And just hours before the vote, polls show Donald Trump is leading over Kamala Harris in all the 7 battleground states. Karnataka High Court to hear petition for CBI inquiry. Notices have been sent to respondents, including Chief Minister Siddaramaiah. The next hearing is set to take place on the 26th of this month. The Parliament back in action. Winter session of the Parliament to begin from November 25th and end on the 20th of December. Meanwhile, India takes first step to hosting Olympics and Paralympics, sends a letter of intent for the 2036 edition of the campaign. Well, voting for the US presidential elections, it has begun, ladies and gentlemen. A small town, mind you, in New Hampshire, the town of Dixville, Notch, they cast the first votes on US election day. Now, this tiny town in the middle of the forest near the Canadian border has traditionally voted first in the nation since the 1960s. New Hampshire, that Dixville, Notch, visuals on your screens. And political observers are billing the unpredictable race for the 47th president of the United States as the most consequential one in decades, while appearing to project a grim picture of the country's future under a Trump presidency. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they both wrapped up this year's presidential race with a heated battle for Pennsylvania. That's Kamala Harris making her way back to Washington, D.C. after a marathon of rallies. Of course, the heated battle ended up in Pennsylvania on Monday, both of them making their final appeals to voters in a state that could be pivotal in deciding the next president. Kamala Harris ended her day in Philadelphia at the iconic steps of the Art Museum, made famous by the movie Rocky, where she declared, "The momentum is on our side." Earlier, she had also visited Allentown, Scranton, and Pittsburgh, and made a stop in Reading to connect with the voters at a Puerto Rican restaurant, even canvassing door-to-door alongside campaign volunteers. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, he began his day in North Carolina and wrapped it up in Michigan, but made stops in Reading and Pittsburgh along the way. The former president delivered fiery speeches at each location, mixing unfounded claims about voter fraud with warnings about migrant crime and promises to revitalize America. With your vote tomorrow, we can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America and the whole world to new heights of glory, Trump told the crowd. Mind you, more than 82 million Americans have already cast their votes as of Sunday, according to the University of Florida's election lab, which tracks early and mail-in votings across the United States. But take a look at this. Here's how the election will certainly pan out. Take a look at that. In Alaska, the polls are going to open at 9:30 p.m. All of this is Indian Standard Time. In Arizona, the polls are going to open at 6:30. Arkansas is going to see it at 7 p.m. California, one of those swing states, at 8:30 p.m., ladies and gentlemen. Colorado, right in the center, part of the Rust Belt, at 7:30 p.m. Connecticut, right up top north, at 4:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m., you're going to look at Delaware, very near to Connecticut. District of Columbia is going to go to vote at 5:30 p.m. That's when the polls open. Florida, another one of those swing states, all eyes on Florida, another 5:30 p.m. Georgia is another swing state. 5:30 p.m. is when the polls are going to be opening out. And this is all, ladies and gentlemen, in Indian Standard Time. It's going to take about 12 hours or so till the polling closes finally. Mind you, anywhere about 8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m. tomorrow morning is till when the election and the voting is going to go on. Now, Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, all those names are going to keep coming on your screens. Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, essentially the battleground states, the swing states. But, you know, coming again back to New Hampshire, where the first round of voting took place, and we showed you those visuals as well, because in Dixville, the big picture is that an election official has noted that voters in the town were following national trends. In the midnight vote in Dixville, Notch, with 3 people voting for Kamala Harris and 3 others for Trump. In totality, only 6 votes that were cast. Polls show the presidential race is a virtual dead heat. Listen in to what the people from Dixville have to say.
I think the president works for me, that I don't work for the president. So this year, for the largest reason that I have for voting against Trump and for Harris is my feeling that I am not the enemy from within. I am from the middle of the system. And if I don't believe in one candidate or another, that doesn't make me an enemy. And now I think we're being told, it's being loudly said by Trump that I am now an enemy because I don't back him. I have been a Republican most of my life, but I find myself in conflict with the Republican Party at this time. So as an American, I pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the Bill of Rights, to the Constitution, to the laws of our country. I don't pledge allegiance to the president.
But now both these candidates, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, both made predictions of victory as they crisscrossed Pennsylvania and several other battleground states just yesterday. It was the final frantic push in what has become one of the closest U.S. presidential elections in history. With just hours now left, minutes rather, both candidates are rallying supporters, marking their final case to voters in critical swing states where every vote could be decisive. The question remains, who will gain the edge in these last moments before Election Day? Well, look at some of these speeches to have a better understanding.
On the final day of their respective presidential campaigns, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris both predicted victory on Monday, with opinion polls showing them locked in a dead heat. The candidates concentrated their efforts in Pennsylvania, the biggest prize on Election Day among the 7 states expected to decide the outcome. Trump appeared before a large crowd in Pittsburgh, where he delivered what his campaign called his closing message to voters.
I will restore peace in the world, and I will rescue the American dream.
Trump pushed economic themes, vowing to deliver an economic boom, while warning Harris would bring economic misery.
My message to Americans tonight is simple. We do not have to live this way. We don't.
Trump's frantic Monday schedule also included stops in the battleground states of North Carolina and Michigan, before returning to his Florida home Monday night. Meanwhile, Harris packed in 5 campaign stops in Pennsylvania throughout the day. In Allentown, she appealed to the city's sizable Puerto Rican community after a comedian at a Trump rally last week made racist comments about Puerto Ricans and other minority groups.
We are not going back. We are not going back.
Later, Harris went door-knocking in Reading and held her own brief rally in Pittsburgh. Harris ended the day with an event in Philadelphia, where she was joined by A-list celebrities including Lady Gaga and Oprah Winfrey. Harris forecast a close race and for the last time implored Pennsylvanians to get out the vote.
The race ain't over yet, and we must finish strong, and this could be one of the closest races in history. Every single vote matters.
The Harris campaign says its internal data shows that undecided voters are breaking in their favor. It reports an increase in early voting among core parts of its coalition, including young voters and voters of color. Trump campaign officials meanwhile said they were monitoring early voting results that show more women have voted than men. That is significant considering Harris's 12-point edge over Trump among female registered voters, according to an October Reuters Ipsos poll. The winner may not be known for days after Tuesday's vote. Trump and his allies, who falsely claim his 2020 election loss was the result of fraud, have already signaled they will attempt to fight any defeat. They have spent months laying the groundwork to again challenge the result if he loses. Harris campaign officials said any attempts by Trump to allege fraud will fail, while Democrats say they have plans in place should Trump try to prematurely claim victory.
Well, time for us to slip into a quick commercial breather here. But TV9 USA is covering the American elections live from its studio in New Jersey. Stay with News9 as we track the polls live at these times on your screens.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe. B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Cooking is an act of love. The first act of love you receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
The presentation it's also important, no?
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is engraved, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself.
With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on News9 Live.
Welcome back. We're tracing the U.S. presidential race, ladies and gentlemen. New Hampshire, Dixville Notch, a tiny little town close to the border with Canada. 6 people ended up voting. The big picture certainly being that it's in tandem with the national trend. That means 3 going for Kamala Harris and 3 votes going for Donald Trump. But here's the bigger picture. On the eve of the U.S. presidential election, Democratic nominee Kamala Harris, she rallied supporters in Philadelphia, emphasizing the potential for a historically close race. Joined by Oprah Winfrey and husband Douglas Emhoff, Kamala Harris addressed the crowd where she positioned herself as the candidate for a new generation of leadership, while stressing the importance of every single vote. Oprah Winfrey urged the electorate to exercise their right to vote, stating every single vote is going to matter. And the entire event, featuring performances by Ricky Martin, Lady Gaga and will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas, concluded with Harris's final appeal. Are you ready to make your voices heard? And as voters head to the polls, Harris's campaign hopes this final push in Pennsylvania is going to be able to secure victory in the tightly contested election.
And tonight, then we finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy, knowing that we, the people, have the power to shape our future, and that we can confront any challenge we face when we do it together. Generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, the baton is in our hands. And to everyone who continues to pour so much of yourselves into this campaign as an extension of your love for our country, I thank you for your time, your effort, and the heart you are putting into this. Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win? Oh, it's good to be back in the city of brotherly love, where the foundation of our democracy was forged. And here at these famous steps, a tribute to those who start as the underdog and climb to victory.
Well, mind you, opinion polls show Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, 78, and Kamala Harris, 60 years of age, are virtually even. The winner may not be known for days after the November 5th vote, though Donald Trump has already signaled that he will attempt to fight any defeat like he did back in 2020. But in what he said was his last ever rally of his political career, U.S. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump on Tuesday compared himself to historical political figures like Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, and Winston Churchill. The Republican has often raised the great emancipator's name and compared himself to, or others to him. He's been treated worse than Lincoln. He's done more than blacks than anyone since Lincoln, and so on. It has become a recurring refrain in Trump's unique brand of oratory skills. Listen in to what Donald Trump exactly had to say.
By the way, the Border Patrol 2 weeks ago gave us the strongest endorsement you've ever heard. They said he's the greatest president in history and the best president on the border by a factor of 10. And I said to them, does that mean I'm better than Abraham Lincoln and George? What? Yes, sir, you're better than both of them. You know, when Winston Churchill, who was a great speaker, he was actually a stutterer, a tremendous stutterer, and he became one of the greatest orators. But when Winston Churchill made a mistake, he didn't go, excuse me, and go back. He just blazed through it. But if I do it, they say, he's cognitively impaired. There's something wrong with him. These people are sick. Those people, look at them.
Well, now the former president continued his rhetoric of border issues and attacking the economic records of the Biden-Harris years in a rally that went into the wee hours of the morning. He ended the rally dancing on stage and on his way to the exit as audience cheered him on. But take a look at this. Kamala Harris told a crowd in Pittsburgh that momentum is on the side of her campaign as she emphasized the role of Pennsylvania and the role the state will have on the entire outcome. Singer Katy Perry performed and voiced her long-standing support for Kamala Harris, who she said she has known since before her Senate run in California.
All right, so Pittsburgh, this is it. Tomorrow is Election Day. Tomorrow is Election Day. And the momentum is on our side. Our campaign has tapped into the ambitions, the aspirations, and the dreams of the American people. And we know it is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And Pittsburgh, we are not going back. We're not going back. And we are not going back because America is ready for a fresh start. And to you I ask then, who here has a plan to vote? Fantastic. Okay, so help spread the word then. Polls are open here in Pennsylvania tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You know that. Go to iwillvote.com for all the information you need, including where and when to vote and where to drop off your mail ballot, because we need everyone to vote Pennsylvania. You will make the difference in this election.
Well, Kamala Harris says, Pennsylvania, you will make the difference this election. Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin had served as a blue wall for the Democratic candidates for a generation. But in 2016, Donald Trump narrowly carried all three, fueling his upset victory over Democrat Hillary Clinton. 4 years later, Joe Biden won the presidency after reclaiming Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania for Democrats, while also notching surprise victories in Georgia and Arizona, two states that had historically voted Republican. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential nominee, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, she rallied supporters at a campaign event in Scranton in Pennsylvania. Let's get this done, Harris told the crowd of volunteers as they headed out to knock on doors.
We're ready to get out the vote. We're ready to win. All right. But what you all are signing up to do today and what you've been doing, let's enjoy it. You know, and I know you do. I can feel the mood in here because it's the best of who we are as a democracy. And so the way I've always been thinking about our campaign in these next 24 hours is as we are getting out the vote, as we are canvassing, let's be intentional about building community, about building coalitions, about reminding people we all have so much more in common than what separates us. So over these next 24 hours, I know everyone is here, including our youngest leaders. I see you over there. I know you're not ready to vote because you look like you're about 8, but you tell the adults in your life why it's important. They vote, okay?
Well, it seems like not even the 8-year-olds are spared. Now, Harris campaigned in 5 Pennsylvania cities, ending the day with a rally in front of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which included, like we've been mentioning, performances by Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, and Oprah Winfrey. Pennsylvania, mind you, is the biggest prize among the battleground states, offering 19 of the 270 electoral college votes a candidate needs to win the presidency. Non-partisan U.S. election analysts calculate Harris needs to win about 45 electoral votes on top of the states she is expected to win easily to capture the White House, while Donald Trump would need about 51 of those. Well, time for us to slip into a quick commercial breather here. But TV9 USA is covering the American elections live from its studio in New Jersey. Stay with News 9 as we track the polls live at these times.
The next Indian icons, beating everyone on the globe, B6E and XEV9E. Mahindra's electric origin SUVs. Catch them at Unlimit India.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface, but not the living people?
Have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump.
You say Harris, nobody knows who the heck we're talking about, right?
Democracy's biggest stage.
What are the key issues dominating the U.S. presidential polls? I'm Hamza Kambazai, coming to you with all the updates from Washington, D.C.
Take a look at what happened.
A grand presidential contest.
I'm Ujjwal, and I shall get you minute-by-minute updates on the shifting voters' mood in the U.S. presidential elections.
News 9 captures the moment.
We'll tell you how the verdict will impact you and the global economy.
Washington, D.C., New York, Texas, Atlanta, Detroit. Ground reports and analysis.
For live updates, please stay tuned to News 9.
Stay live with News 9.
Welcome back. You're watching News 9. We're focusing on the U.S. presidential race and shifting our focus to small little Allentown next, where Kamala Harris predicted victory and promised to be a president for all the Americans as she appealed to the city's substantial Puerto Rican community, which turned out to be a big political issue in the run-up to the elections as well. City's substantial Puerto Rican community who were outraged by the insults from a comedian at a Donald Trump rally at Madison Square Garden in New York. Now, Kamala Harris, she got a hand from rapper Fat Joe, who is of Puerto Rican and Cuban descent. Listen in to what Fat Joe had to say, even as you look at these visuals of the door-to-door campaign that was carried out in Pennsylvania.
The other day in Madison Square Garden, that was no joke, ladies and gentlemen. That was no joke. And it was filled with so much hate. Hatred of Jewish people. Hatred of black people. Carving watermelons. Calling Puerto Rico an island of garbage. My Latinos, where is your pride? I don't know why, but if I'm speaking to some undecided Puerto Ricans, especially in Pennsylvania, what more they got to do to show you who they are? I'm telling you. And the thing about Fat Joe, if you don't know him, he's authentic. He will not sell his soul for nobody in the world. If I tell you Kamala Harris is with us, she's with us. Every single vote matters.
Now back to that door-to-door campaign. Harris's entire campaign team said its volunteers knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors in each of the battleground states this weekend. The campaign says its internal data shows that undecided voters are breaking in their favor and says it has seen an increase in early voting among core parts of its coalition, including young voters and the voters of color.
And to those certain individuals who still want to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, trying to take us back to the days when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions, well, to them, we say we are not going back. We are not going back. And we are not going back. One day left, and we need to finish this strong and get this done. So let's get out the vote. Let's reach out to all of our folks in the next 24 hours, family and friends and classmates and neighbors and co-workers. And as we do, I ask, let us please be intentional about building community.
Meanwhile, about 14,000 kilometers away, prayers were held in the ancestral village of U.S. Democratic presidential candidate and the Vice President of the country, Kamala Harris, for her victory in the U.S. presidential race. Harris's maternal grandfather, P.V. Gopalan, was born more than a century ago in the village in Tamil Nadu. At this particular temple in the Tamil Nadu village, there is a stone that shows the names of Kamala Harris and her grandfather for public donations. Outside, a big banner wishes her success in the election, calling her the daughter of the land. Gopalan and his family migrated a few hundred kilometers to Chennai, where he worked as a senior government official until his retirement. But the ancestral village in Tamil Nadu also praying for the victory of the Democratic candidate. Now take a look at this as well. One presidential analyst has warned that there could be tremendous dangers ahead of regarding possible outcomes of the 2024 presidential elections. He also said that if the Democrat Kamala Harris or Republican Donald Trump neither get 270 electoral votes required to be declared the winner, then it could come down to the U.S. House of Representatives picking up the next president.
I'm most worried about the electors because you do have quite a number of states with Trump Republican governors and Trump legislators, and I have no doubt that Trump will push them to steal the electoral vote. And there are ways of doing it. We learned about a lot of vulnerabilities in our system 4 years ago. Why did we only learn about it then? Because no president has ever attempted to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
And now 4 years after Donald Trump tried to overturn his election loss, his false conspiracy theories about voter fraud have become an article of faith among many Republican members of local election boards that certify results. Their rise raises the chances that pro-Trump officials in multiple jurisdictions will be able to delay or sow doubt over the November 5th presidential elections if Donald Trump loses. Voter fraud is exceedingly rare in the United States, despite Donald Trump's false claim, supported by a majority of Republicans in Congress, that the 2020 election was stolen away from Donald Trump. Well, time for a quick short break. But TV9 USA is covering the American elections live from its studio in New Jersey. Stay with News9 as we track the polls live at these times. Presidential election night, 7 a.m. onwards, Indian Standard Time.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Cooking is an act of law. The first act of love you receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important, you know.
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Indri, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself.
With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on News9 Live.
The U.S. presidential race, ladies and gentlemen, voting has already begun. You can vouch on News9 to bring you a county-by-county, state-by-state result of what's really happening in this U.S. election result. For the time being, shifting our focus to what took place in Miami. Now, at a barbershop in Miami's Little Haiti, a Harris Walls campaign poster hangs above the chairs as Haitian-American barbers trim away stubble to the sound of newscasts on the television about the U.S. presidential race. Outrage has been growing among Florida's Haitian community, the largest in the United States, as former President Donald Trump doubles down on false claims that Haitian immigrants in Ohio have been stealing and eating pets. As election day approached, many Haitian Americans looked to make their voices heard at the ballot box by voting for Kamala Harris.
We support Kamala. I think she could do the job for us. She's the best fit. She's the best fit for me right now. So you want me to say it, so I will say it. Yes, I do vote for Kamala. So we didn't feel happy at all. So it didn't sound good at all for us. Imagine some people say like we're eating pets. You know what I'm saying? So, but hey, it's life. But we didn't feel good about it. So
I'm thinking Kamala would do a better job with us Haitian. Hey, look how Trump be talking about Haitian. That's why. I feel really bad because they're nothing but lies. But hey, what can we do? He has freedom of speech. He could say whatever he wants, but don't lie. Don't lie. Just speak the truth.
Meanwhile, many Americans are also reporting feeling stressed and anxious related to the heated presidential race. An American Psychological Association and a poll that was taken earlier this year found that 65% of United States adults always or often felt exhausted by politics, and 55% always or often felt angry with politics. Here's a report.
Feeling stressed about the election? You're not alone. An American Psychological Association poll taken earlier this year found that 65% of U.S. adults felt exhausted by politics, while 55% felt angry.
You hear so much on both sides nonstop, like it's the end of democracy.
Two different characters, outlook on life. It's just a crazy world.
He is only focused on himself.
She's a low IQ individual.
This is therapist Laura Goldstein.
It's stress, it's anxiety, it's fear. It can sometimes be anger or outrage.
She says the election has increasingly come up during client sessions.
I think one of the other big things that we're seeing a lot of is people struggling to connect because it doesn't always feel safe to talk about. You don't know what environments are a safe environment to have political conversations or to discharge some of the stress.
Carrie Jarvie is a mental health counselor.
Yeah, if someone's experiencing stress leading up to this election cycle, it starts with reflecting on what is my level of media consumption? Has it reached the point where it's not helpful anymore?
He says people suffering from election anxiety should seek activities that decrease interaction from the media.
What are the things that make you feel like yourself?
Like surfing or going on a trail.
Election-wise, yeah, no one talks election. This is a good release to be out in nature.
Now, the campus of Howard University was abuzz with energy as the school in the heart of Washington, D.C. prepared to host Democratic presidential candidate Vice President Kamala Harris for her election night watch party. As law enforcement looked on, workers are setting up fencing around the perimeter of the campus, limiting access to the urban campus from nearby streets. In the yard, as the students call the university's main quad, workers have set up screens and have erected a stage from where Harris and Vice President Tim Walz are expected to speak. With reporters, law enforcement and construction workers on campus, students said the energy was palpable and seemed both excited and proud to have an alumna choose their university to host the historic event. Howard is one of the country's premier HBCU and is known for such notable alumni as former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, Black Panther actor Chadwick Boseman, Pulitzer Prize-winning author Toni Morrison, among several others. Founded back in 1867, right after the Civil War, when most universities would not admit African Americans, Howard has long provided higher education for the country's African American professionals.
I was just overwhelmed with so much excitement. I feel like this is such an amazing opportunity for me as a Black African American girl who has an idea or want to be a professional social justice attorney. I just feel like this is just an amazing opportunity to see. Like, I was just very, very excited and just so emotional to see like somebody who looks like me having the possibility of having like the most powerful role or powerful job within this nation. So I'm just amazed.
It was very surreal. Honestly, I found out through social media when it was like in an email from our president, Benson. So he said that Kamala chose Howard to have a watch party, and it was just so surreal seeing like them building the construction on the yard, which is iconic in itself, and just being a current student on a university who has so much notable alumni. It's honestly, I don't believe it. Like, I see it, but it's like it hasn't hit me yet. So
election night watch parties. It is a big business bonanza, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, which is why from Washington, D.C. right up till Maine as well is where election night watch parties are hosted all across the country. Kamala Harris is going back to her own college, the Howard University. Students certainly excited at this point in time. But homecoming weekends, just a couple of days back, at historically Black colleges had extra significance this year. Because weeks before the November 5th election, with Howard University graduate Kamala Harris, a Democrat running for the White House against Republican former President Donald Trump, the historically Black colleges, it seems to be, are going to be a driving factor. Here's an entire report. Take a look.
For decades, historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs, have played a prominent role in elections. This year is proving no different.
I really do like how the campus is making sure every student is involved in voting, because this is a really, really big election.
This is North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University's homecoming weekend. It's a weekend-long celebration of Black culture, tradition, school pride, and community spirit. But there's extra buzz, with the November 5th vote just around the corner for this election battleground.
Back in band camp, actually, they wanted to make sure everybody was registered to vote. So we had a whole classroom on how to register,
Young Americans could play a crucial role in the race, with many voting for the first time in a presidential election.
I got to Howard when I went to college.
Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is an HBCU grad herself. She and her Republican rival Donald Trump have both campaigned with an eye on young and undecided voters. They have invested heavily on political ads and taken multiple trips to battleground states, including Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina, where more than a dozen HBCUs are located.
We know that North Carolina is in desperate need of youth vote.
Tiffany Seawright is the Director of Leadership and Engagement at North Carolina A&T State.
We are pushing early vote, we are pushing the youth vote, we are pushing them to vote no matter where they are. In this moment, to see students actually start to stand up again, we've seen a turnaround towards the better.
While Harris has received strong support among young black women, Trump has reportedly gained traction among black men, a stat some Democratic strategists say has been exaggerated. A recent NAACP survey found from August to October, the percentage of black men under 50 likely to vote for Trump fell from 27 to 21%.
We had Barack Obama, the first black president, and it's time for a woman to take leadership. It's time. I think it's time.
HBCUs have long been cultural and political hubs among black communities. They were once the only places where black Americans could pursue higher education, when discriminatory laws barred them from attending predominantly white universities.
I'm really glad that as an HBCU student, I'm seeing firsthand that people actually care about our country and they care about us as well.
Well, so black youth and women with Kamala Harris, several black men with Donald Trump. But Nigerians are watching the U.S. election campaign closely as well, with many Nigerians hoping that Donald Trump would win the U.S. elections, identifying with his conservative social views.
Afam Uga is getting set for this year's U.S. elections. He describes himself as a graphic artist and an adventurer. Although he has friends and family in the U.S., he has never been there himself. Donald Trump is his hero. Afam has already spent more than 200 euros on things like this.
As for me, I'm going to vote in spirit. I'll support him spiritually with prayers. Trump is going to win this election, and I'm seeing him in the White House in a couple of months to come as the president of America.
Afam is convinced a Trump presidency will benefit Nigeria's economy, and he doesn't mind that Trump has been insulting about Africa in the past.
It's just reality. I like people that tell you to your face, this is what you are, you change. You understand me? If you say country in Africa, is he really lying to us? People are taking our money away. Let people to suffer in penury here.
In markets around Lagos, books by Donald Trump are among the best sellers.
I sell books almost every day. His book, I sold it almost every day. I got two copies, 3 copies in a day. When you read his book and you apply it, you will make it in life.
In a deeply religious country like Nigeria, it's also Trump's conservative agenda, including how they assume he stands on gay rights, that appeals to people.
He believes in God. I don't know. That's my opinion. He believes in God. And anybody who believes in God is someone for me.
We need him. He's the best thing that will happen to the world now. Because when he entered there, you know what to do. You know the right thing to do to bring the world together, to bring peace to the world and make everywhere to be okay.
The popular columnist Inedi Ogaziechi cannot understand her fellow Nigerians' love for Trump. She would love to see a President Kamala Harris as an inspiration for young women in her country.
If she becomes the first American female president, that's beyond every other economic, political, or spiritual powers that America wields, would send profound political and economic message to the rest of the world.
Afam is determined to show his devotion to Trump. This poster is heading for his office. Anyone doing business with him will know who his idol is. He also plans to visit the US.
But hey, let's circle back to the blitzkrieg campaign from both the candidates. And on the evening of the presidential election, the district attorney for Philadelphia, the largest city in the swing state of Pennsylvania, issued a clear warning to anyone considering interfering in the city's election. Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner minced no words as he stood before his election task force and said they are ready to protect the electoral process in the city.
We don't have any deep abiding fears or concerns. We don't have any reports. I want people to be reassured that when they get up tomorrow to go vote, if they have not voted already, that Everybody in this city is working and has been working for months to make sure that there will be nothing tough about that experience and nothing to fear in that experience. But I also want to be clear, anybody who thinks it's time to play militia, anybody who thinks it's time to insult, to deride, to mistreat, to threaten people, find out. We do have the cuffs, we do have the jail cells, we do have the Philly juries, and we have the state prisons. So if you're going to try to turn an election into some form of coercion, if you're going to try to bully people, bully votes or voters, you're going to try to erase votes, you're going to try any of that nonsense, we're not playing. F around and find out. That's what we're going to do. This is the bottom line. Anybody who thinks you're going to play those games in Philadelphia, you're going to do it in bad faith. I got no problem with doing it in good faith. But if you're going to do it in bad faith, there is an election court, there are judges, they have orders. And those orders are going to say, in essence, get out of the polling place. Anybody who doesn't get out, you're getting arrested. That's how it works, okay? So if any of you are on your little Slack communications back and forth saying, won't this be fun? You can have your fun in a jail cell, because that's what's coming.
Now you've got economy, you've got health, you've got the abortion issue, the border issue, several of those poll issues that both the candidates were talking about. On the economical front, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has promised to impose tariffs on Mexico and China if elected, unless both nations take decisive action to halt the flow of fentanyl into the United States. Speaking to a large crowd in Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump delivered what his campaign described as his final message to voters before Election Day. Trump announced a proposed 25% tariff on goods from Mexico and indicated he would impose similar measures on China for exporting fentanyl to Mexico.
And Mexico, you know, people are surprised to hear this. Mexico is our largest trading partner. And if we put even a small tariff on like 10, 15%, you're talking about tens of billions of dollars, and they're not going to want to have that long. And they're strong. They can stop it if they want. They can do it if they want. They'll probably have to make a deal with the cartels because the cartels totally run Mexico, totally. It's terrible things are happening in Mexico. But we're going to put a tariff on Mexico if they don't immediately stop sending that horrible stuff into this country. And let me tell you something, those drugs will stop so damn fast that your head will spin. And I'm not playing games. And I'm doing the same thing to China. If they want to sell Mexico fentanyl at levels that it's going crazy right now what they're doing. You know, at least we fought it like hell, and we did relatively successfully. You can never, they put it in hubcaps of cars. It's tough. It's all over the place. It's genius, some of these devices they come up with. But I've told China, you want to sell, we're going to have a good relationship with China, hopefully. I want to have a good relationship. But you sell fentanyl into the United States through Mexico, we're putting a 25% or so tariff on until such time as you stop doing it. And they're not going to do it for long because that is a massive penalty.
Now, Republican nominee Donald Trump and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, in that heated push for support, are framing each other this election as the bad turning point for America. Trump campaigned in Reading and Pennsylvania, where he pledged to invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 if elected, promising what he calls the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. His campaign schedule, it included rallies in Pittsburgh and Grand Rapids, Michigan, before he headed back to Palm Beach, Florida to cast his vote and await the election results.
I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. You know, 1798, that's when they ran the country a little tougher than we run it today. Today you get a little slap in the wrist when you kill somebody. You kill somebody. Oh. And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. You're fired. November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America. And on day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. We're going to get them out. We have to. We are going to fire Kamala, and we're going to save America. And I will stop the chaos in the Middle East. There's another thing, Israel, October 7th. October 7th would have never happened. All of those people that were hostages, hopefully are still, because I hope they're of hostage. I just hope they haven't been killed, but I think a lot of them are killed. I think a lot of them have been killed, but we can hope again. And we will make America great again.
Meanwhile, Thailand's famous baby hippo, Mu Deng, predicted a win for Republican candidate Donald Trump in the U.S. presidential elections. But as far as Mu Deng is concerned, it's going to be the Republican Party up on top. Well, now polls closing can certainly differ from state to state, sometimes county to county as well. What we're picking up at this point in time is that most polling stations will close somewhere between 7 to 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time. According to the Indian Standard Time, that's anywhere around morning 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., after which the counting then goes on. It could take days before somebody tries and understands who is going to be right there up on top. Count on News9 to bring you all the latest details, because TV9 USA is covering the American elections live from its studio in New Jersey. Stay with News9 as we track the polls live at these times. Top developments on the other side. Keep watching News9.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Indian Americans are redefining success in every field. However, Indian Americans haven't historically been a political force in US elections. But the 2024 race could mark a turning point for one of the fastest growing immigrant groups in the country. Ever since Kamala Harris, the daughter of an Indian mother, unexpectedly rose to become the 2024 Democratic nominee, Indian American communities say they've seen a groundswell of support and energy for this election. Elections are won on the margin, and Indian Americans can be that margin of victory. This is the Indian American vote.
How do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump.
You say Harris, nobody knows who the heck we're talking about, right?
Democracy's biggest stage.
What are the key issues dominating the U.S. presidential polls? I'm Hamza Kambazai, coming to you with all the updates from Washington, D.C.
Take a look at what happened.
A grand presidential contest.
I'm Ujjwal, and I shall get you minute-by-minute updates on the shifting voters' mood in the U.S. presidential elections.
News9 captures the moment.
will tell you how the verdict will impact you and the global economy.
Washington, D.C., New York, Texas, Atlanta, Detroit. Ground reports and analysis.
For live updates, please stay tuned to News9.
Stay live with News9.
Cooking is an act of love. The first act of love you receive from our mothers in the families.
Modern Indian food is all about contemporary and innovative approach to traditional Indian cooking.
Representation it's also important, you know.
I want to wear this white coat every day and then be a chef.
There are stories. If the name of whiskey is Indri, then there is a whole story behind that.
Cooking food is like a therapy, and eating one is like a pleasure I can give it to myself.
With Lounge Nights, I'm on a journey to celebrate and recognize the best food and nightlife establishments in various cities across India.
Radical presents Lounge Nights every Saturday and Sunday only on News9 Live.
Namaskara and welcome to the South Indian. My name is Sudha Sadanan, and as always I shall bring to you 9 top stories from the south of India. Our first story is coming up on your screens right now, and a very important one. Bengaluru chokes post-Diwali as PM 2.5 levels rise and air quality worsens in several places. That's our main story. Bengaluru chokes post-Diwali. There are many Indian cities which are regularly in the focus for all the wrong reasons in the recent past. Terrible flooding post-rains, killer potholes and pathetic infrastructure. Delhi NCR, of course, comes right on top, and it's now a gas chamber, let me tell you, which doesn't seem to have a solution in the near future. However, when one witnesses the descent of a city like Bengaluru, once called a garden city and a haven and a paradise amongst a lot of people, particularly those who sought retirement, and king among metros, it becomes a huge concern when Bengaluru also starts ticking all the wrong boxes. We've done several stories on how this Indian Silicon Valley's killer potholes has swallowed many lives, how every rain the roads disappear, how the water gets into homes. But today we shall speak about how Bengaluru's air quality plummeted this Deepavali and the effects of which are felt even a week post the festival. Yes, Deepavali is over, but the fact is the aftermath lingers on in the air for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, the culprit for this terrible AQI was of course firecrackers, and this despite regulations from the Karnataka State Pollution Control Board, which is KSPCB, that only green crackers should be burst. But then who was listening? The Times of India reported how various areas in the city manifested extremely high AQI readings thanks to the bursting of firecrackers, propelling daily average PM 2.5 levels past 100 microns per cubic meter. By the way, the threshold for poor air quality in over 90% of the monitored areas is according to the KSPCB official. He said this, that the sharp rise in PM 2.5 particle concentrations is of particular concern, as these particles can penetrate deep into the lungs, exacerbating respiratory issues. Shant A. Timaya, chairperson of KSBCB, said, post-COVID-19 pandemic, this is the first time that pollution is so high during Deepavali. And then of course it was the unrelenting traffic, people coming and going, people from outside Bengaluru coming into the city, people from Bengaluru leaving the city for their holidays during Deepavali, which added to the overall problem. And what is worse is that despite green crackers, which gives one some kind of a mental respite, you know, when you think green crackers, you think not going to be so bad. We think that we don't have to really breathe noxious fumes. Bengaluru is still battling the aftermath. Let me go across to a guest to understand what is the reason. Of course, it's green crackers, he may say, but then going forward, what is the way out? Professor H. Paramesh, environmentalist and pulmonologist from the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. Professor, it is such an honor to have you on air, sir. You know, we concentrate a lot on Bengaluru as a city, because I just described that was a city which was called a king amongst all the metros. I mean, neighboring city of Chennai, they used to envy